Some of the biggest backers of Donald Trump's presidency were for-profit prison operators who bask in his tough stance on illegal immigration and glowing reviews of their industry.
By the way, with prisons, I do think we can do a lot of privatizations and private prisons. It seems to work a lot better.
Well, that statement, folks, was wrong. In fact, last year, a Department of Justice audit found that private prison facilities had more safety and security issues than federally run prisons, which was in part why in August, President Obama ordered his Justice Department to begin phasing out their private prison contracts. Well, guess what? That has now changed. Yesterday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions ordered the continued use of private prisons. Now, when Obama made the decision in August, the next day, a subsidiary of GEO Group, one of the nation's largest for-profit prison operators, donated $100,000 to the pro-Trump super PAC, Rebuilding America Now. Recently, the GEO Group and another prison operator, CoreCivic, each gave $250,000 to support Trump's inaugural festivities. Now, they are looking to profit from the decision by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. In fact, yesterday, after the decision was announced by Sessions, the stock price of the companies shot up. That's how major this issue is. Now, both GEO Group and CoreCivic say they do not advocate policy that might affect their businesses. Critics would disagree. Joining us by phone from New York is Carmen Perez, Executive Director of Gathering for Justice, also in D.C., Law Victoria Burke, political analyst and writer for NBC Black, Jamira Burley, human rights activist, Charles Butler, conservative talk show host of The Reality Check, Dr. Chris Metzler, legal scholar, political scientist, and CEO of the JMI Group. Carmen, I'll start with you. Your thoughts about this decision by Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, to reverse that policy put in place by President Obama when it comes to private prisons?
So what I would have to say, thank you, Roland, for having me on the show, is what we are seeing right now is truly an example of corporations being in bed with our elected officials. The fact that private prison companies invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into Donald Trump's presidential campaign demonstrates the fact that they are now seeing their investment, their return on investment. And this is a demonstration of our government creating policy and using our tax dollars to enforce a system of biased policing and mass incarceration. Many of these prisons that are private oftentimes use cheap labor to make a lot of the products that we use and only pay 27 cents an hour to make a significant profit. And the reality of this is slave labor. And so these prisons are dangerous and unaccountable, and it is unacceptable at the fact that we are now using them and using them for individuals that are looking for citizenship in this country.
Well, and also when you talk about this whole idea of private prisons, we also, and this is a federal level issue, but we're seeing this impact on the state level where, frankly, you have now towns that are saying, oh, please give us more inmates because they are economic generators. You literally have towns in Mississippi and other states that are saying, oh, if who are complaining about fewer prisoners coming to those areas, saying we're going to lose jobs. And so how much sense does it make to be tying more inmates to economic development?
It doesn't make any sense. The reality, those that are making up our prison population are primarily Black and Latino. And so, again, we are creating a system that funnels our people through, that are being taken away from our communities. And there's so many corporations and so many, again, investments in private prisons, and I think we have to put a stop to it. The fact that we are relying on jobs in prisons is a disservice to our communities. We need to do better. But again, for this to come down from the president, from Jeff Sessions, is just, again, rolling back the work that has been done by advocates for so long. And it's just unacceptable. We cannot allow this to happen.
All right, Carmen Perez, Gathering for Justice. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's go to our panel. Law and Victoria Burke, I want to start with you. I'm here in Orlando. Last night, the Central Florida Urban League, they had a town hall dealing with the issue of criminal justice. And we had a panel there with a couple of panels, one dealing with economic empowerment and jobs, and the other dealing with criminal justice, including a judge on the court here, the state's attorney, as well as two other defense attorney. And here's what was interesting. The defense attorney made a statement that was stunning. He said, this thing has gotten so bad that in Hawaii was literally sending their inmates to to Kentucky, because Kentucky said, hey, we have open cells, we'll take them. Now you see this decision by Jeff Sessions. What does it say, again, this desire to use more of these federal private prisons? Is this a matter of profiting off of inmates?
Yes, I mean, private prisons is a $5 billion industry. 20% of the federal prisoners are in private prisons. Jeff Sessions is from Alabama. Alabama, if it was a country, would be 5th in the world in incarceration. In the United States, Alabama is 4th in this country in incarceration. There's nothing really new to see here. This is what they do in Alabama. 15% of the African Americans can't vote in Alabama because of a felony arrest. I mean, Jeff Sessions was in the Senate for 20 years and didn't change any of that. Alabama is one of the poorest states, which of course is not surprising to anybody, and none of this should be surprising. What is kind of surprising is that when we did the first war on drugs under Nixon and Reagan, we didn't have the level of incarceration that we have now. So it really makes no sense what they're doing. They're doing it at a time when crime in this country is a 45-year low. So it makes no sense to be focused on incarceration.
Right. Charles Butler, I want to go to you. You have the situation where this decision here, when you have a report that shows that private prisons are doing worse when it comes to safety standards than federally run prisons, what's the whole point then of using more private prisons if the federally run prisons are being run better and safer?
Well, I agree with that. I think we should phase out privately run prisons. I've never been an advocate of privately run prisons. And I think that we need to address the law, period. We need to address 3 strikes, which we're trying to do. We need to address sentencing disparities. And these are things that have festered since Bill Clinton's administration. So it's time to get busy. That's been over 30 years ago.
Well, actually, Chris Metzler, we've been seeing this fester really since, slavery in terms of in this country, since the 13th Amendment was put in place in terms of how we look at inmates in America as economic generators. That's the problem.
That's absolutely the problem, and this is just unexplainable. But it is, in fact, the way that business is done. It continues to be done the same way. And I think it's important for us to understand something here. A lot of people are saying that they're surprised at the way that President Trump is governing. He is doing exactly what he said he would do. And I'll leave that right there.
Jameer Burley, I want to go to you. I mean, to Chris's point, I mean, yes, Trump said he was going to do this, but this also speaks to the issue that critics raised in the confirmation hearings of then Senator Jeff Sessions. And so Lord only knows what's going to be the next decision. First of all, in only a couple of days, he made one decision when it came to rolling back the Obama administration's decision when it comes to transgender bathrooms and students. Now you have this decision here. And so, you know, what does it say that what 4 years of Jeff Sessions will look like as a nation's chief law enforcement officer?
Well, one, that we may all be arrested by the end of the next 4 years. But what I will say is that, to his point, Donald Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do throughout the entire campaign. And so for those who said that black people, brown people could afford a Trump presidency, I think we're clearly seeing the fruit of those conversations. But what I will say is that the clip that you showed earlier of Donald Trump talking about how private prisons are actually working better, that's incorrect. And it's just another example of him using facts that are actually incorrect and saying it as if it's real. And we have to hold him accountable to that. We know that private prisons have high recidivism rate, and their goal isn't to alleviate crime, and their goal isn't to have citizens returning back to society better than they came, but really to get them back and to fill their beds and to make profit for their shareholders. And so Jeff Sessions is not going to be an advocate for any of us. If anything, he's going to continue to arrest black and brown bodies in communities that are already over-policed.
But the recidivism rate is 90%, regardless. So whether it's a private prison or a federal prison, recidivism rates are what they are. And in terms of black and
but Charles, factually, Charles, factually, she is correct. Reports show that there is a higher recidivism rate of individuals who are coming out of private prisons as opposed to federally run prisons.
But when it's 90% across the board.
And so someone has to ask why.
But when it's, you're right, but it's 90% before we had private prisons. I mean.
But that doesn't negate the problem with private prisons.
It doesn't.
Private prisons' goal isn't to stop violence, it's to get laws to impact communities where they continue to have more bodies filling their seats. Many states have contracts with private prisons that actually say they have to have 80% of their beds filled or the state owes them money.
Exactly.
So their goal isn't to reduce crime.
Their goal is to make that $5 billion. And now we have, once again, this administration seems to only be able to concentrate on communities of color when they do policy.
And
whether it's deportation, whether it's incarceration, who else are they talking about?
Sounds like we're breaking laws here.
They're blunting the power of black and brown communities because these people in the White House, Steve Bannon, Steve Miller, they understand what the demographics are in this country, and they understand how power works in this country. The first thing out of the gate has been the Muslim ban and mass deportation. And then when this president refers to crime, he's always referring to communities of color. So there's no coincidence in any of this. When we see the war on drugs, when we saw it during Reagan and we saw it during Clinton, African Americans are always over-indexed. I mean, why would we think that anything would be different now? But again, what's strange now is that we're at a 45-year low in crime. So it really makes no sense now.
And in fact, Charles, I want you to speak to this. We also heard from the Justice Department that they are going to even be more aggressive in enforcing federal marijuana laws when you are seeing changes on the state level where people are saying if you are a nonviolent offender, low-level marijuana user, or you're carrying, they're saying let's not throw folks in jail. And so what is this administration saying when it comes to these issues? It sounds to me like, it's going to be great times to buy stock in a private prison company.
Or a marijuana company.
No, but the only people that's ever been able to benefit off of the marijuana new laws in many of the states are white people.
Right.
It haven't been black people who have been over-prosecuted for those crimes in many years. But what I will say is specifically to this is the fact that this is counteractive to Donald Trump's policies. Let the states decide. The states have already decided on where they stand on marijuana.
Right.
And yet he's coming in over.
Exactly. Now suddenly they're rule of law now on marijuana.
Well, the contradiction for me here as a conservative is the following. One, the rationale allegedly for taking away the transgender bathroom rule was because, in fact, it's properly up to the states to decide. That was the rationale. In this case, relative to the marijuana thing, apparently it is up to the federal government. So it's a bit schizophrenic, frankly, and I don't understand from a conservative standpoint how that works. Well, I think I've answered my own
Charles,
question.
what about that?
It doesn't.
Well, I think that I think that first, the marijuana laws should be judged by the states, but we have federal drug laws. So it's like gun laws. You can carry in some states, you can't carry in other states. Why don't we have a federal policy on concealed carry? There are a lot of things that are broken that I think will be addressed in this administration and addressed by this Congress, and we should hold their feet to the fire.
But at the end of the day, go ahead, Laura. Go ahead.
There's states' rights when it comes to things like education, but then all of a sudden they're rule of law when it comes to mass incarceration. I mean, we're spending we lead the world, of course, still in incarceration. We're spending $63 billion on it a year. Obviously, the private prison piece is a profit-driven thing, but it's also a power-driven thing. This is about blunting the power of certain communities. The marijuana thing, hiring more ICE agents, who do you think that's going to be? You're going to hire 15,000 more cops? You know, when Clinton had in the crime bill, he's going to hire 100,000 more cops. Who got the jobs? So, I mean, all of these things are driven to certain communities, and that's the way they roll. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new to see here.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. Your hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh, my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not going to let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally.
What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.